Can you hear me okay? All right. Good afternoon. The time is 1:01, and I will call to order the August 30th, 2022 meeting of the Contractors State License Board. I am Mary Tygart, the CSLB Board Chair. And we'll begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. So if we could all please stand, I would invite Diana Love to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Could everyone put your right hand over your heart and begin? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
I will now note for the record that Jim Ruane has an excused or approved absence for today, and begin with confirming board member attendance. So Mariah, if you could do the roll call.
Mary Tygart,
Present.
Rodney Kobos,
Present.
David De La Torre,
Here.
Miguel Galarza, here. Susan Granzella,
She stepped away.
okay. Alan Guy,
Here.
Jacob Lopez, here. Diana Love,
Here.
Michael Mark,
Here.
Steve Pinelli,
Here.
James Ruane, approved absence, Johnny Simpson,
Here.
Susan Granzella.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. To item B, which is public comment and requesting items for future meetings. The board values public input as part of our consumer protection mission. To allow us enough time to conduct our full schedule of business today, I'm limiting public comments to 3 minutes apiece. If your comments don't involve an item on today's agenda, this would be the time when you can make them. If you have comments are on one of our agenda items, we encourage you to wait until we get to that item. We will give you an opportunity to make your comments at that time. We also ask that your public comment relate to the agenda item currently before the board. There are a few other rules that apply. First, California law prohibits board members from discussing any matter brought up during public comment, and board members are not allowed to act on any item not on today's agenda. Second, if you want the board to discuss a topic not on the agenda, you can ask us to consider placing that item on an agenda for a future meeting. Finally, if you have an application, complaint, or disciplinary charge pending before the board, we ask that you not discuss the details of your case or pending complaint. That's because board members may be the judges and by law are not permitted to receive evidence or information that is not part of the administrative record in the case. Before we ask for public comment, I want to recognize consumer protection advocate Jody Costello, who is in the audience. Jody has worked for many years educating consumers on how to protect themselves when hiring a contractor. She has also been a true consumer protection partner to CSLB by assisting consumers in resolving complaints and identifying opportunities for CSLB staff to improve consumer protection procedures. Jody, do you want to say a few words?
Thank you. Thank you very much for that. I appreciate that. Yeah, Dave and I worked together for 17 years when he was the enforcement chief, and we did a lot of good work together. And I'm grateful for that opportunity. And I do get the walking wounded to my website. I do have a lot of consumers that come to me. But Dave has always been so gracious in trying to work these and sort these things out. So I appreciate it greatly. I am concerned about the need for consumer protection because, you know, not a week goes by that I don't get a complaint from somebody, not only California, but across the board, so across the state. So I'm just grateful to be able to help when I can, and I appreciate the acknowledgement. But I do implore that you continue to actively go after the contractors that are not so great and do what you need to do in terms of disciplinary action. I was in that position 22 years ago, so and I know I was one of the few lucky ones that came out, and I was in litigation, so I was very lucky, but I also had a really good case. So again, I appreciate the acknowledgement, and just keep on keeping on with the enforcement. Thank you.
Thank you, Jody. I appreciate your comments and also your partnership. It really underlines what we are all here for. So thank you very much. So now to public comments. Are there any comments from the public? Okay, seeing none, how about board members? Do we have any board members that have an item they would like to be placed on a future agenda? Okay, very good. Next is agenda item C, presentation of certificates of recognition. Today, we are recognizing industry expert Dan Francisco. For the past 22 years, Dan has been a member of CSLB's Industry Expert Program. The majority of CSLB consumer complaints received are workmanship related. Licensed contractors that serve as industry experts for CSLB are vital to assisting staff in resolving construction disputes, determining if the work was performed to trade standards and contract requirements, and when necessary, providing expert testimony to support violations of law in administrative hearings. Among the numerous inspections Dan has performed, he recalls the most interesting inspection he's done involved a consumer hiring a contractor to add a new second story to their home, only to come back from vacation and find their house demolished except for two 2x4 skeleton walls. Dan, we appreciate your willingness to assist consumers and CSLB through your work with the CSLB Industry Expert Program. We have a certificate for you. The one I have here today is a placeholder for your official certificate, but it does have the following verbiage. The certificate of recognition is presented to Dan Francisco for providing outstanding contributions to the Contractor State License Board, Enforcement Division, and the construction industry by performing numerous industry expert inspections and testifying in administrative hearings. CSLB, the California construction industry, and the people of California thank you for your exceptional performance. Thank you, Dan.
Can we bring him up, get a photo?
Yeah, we'd like to do a brief photo if we can.
Yeah, we're going to get a photo with you presenting it to him.
Terrific.
We might want to put this as background.
Are there any board members who would like to comment? Okay, David, I understand you would like to comment.
Yeah, I just really want to thank Dan for all the work that he's done. He's taken on some of the hardest cases, and what's important to recognize is that the majority of our consumer complaints relate to poor workmanship or abandonment. Our section depends on people like Dan giving back to the industry. We know that you can make more in the private sector than we're able to pay you. So just really, on behalf of the Enforcement Division and consumers that you've helped, thank you so much.
The review and possible approval of the June 16th, 2022 board meeting minutes, which begin on page 10 of your packet. Do any board members have any edits to the minutes? Okay, may I ask for a motion to approve the June 16th, 2022 board meeting minutes?
Motion to approve.
I'll second.
Is there any comment from board members? Any public comment? Okay, Mariah, can you please call the roll?
Mary Tykert,
Yes.
Rodney Cobos,
Yes.
David De La Torre,
Aye.
Miguel Galarza, Susan Granzella, Alan Guy,
Aye.
Jacob Lopez, Diana Love,
Aye.
Michael Mark,
Aye.
Steve Pinelli,
Aye.
James Ruane, approved absence, Johnny Simpson.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Thank you. Do I have a motion to approve the August 3rd, 2022 Enforcement Committee Summary Report?
Motion to approve.
Is there any comment from board members? Any public comment? Okay, Mariah, can you please call the roll?
Mary Tykert,
Aye.
Rodney Cobos, David De La Torre,
Aye.
Miguel Galarza, Susan Granzella, Alan Guy,
Aye.
Jacob Lopez, Diana Love, Michael Mark, Steve Pinelli,
Aye.
James Ruane, approved absence, Johnny Simpson.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Thank you. Next to item D3 is the Registrar's report. So David Folk, I turn the floor to you.
Thank you, Chair Teichert. Just a brief report today. Communication with the Governor's Deputy Appointment Secretaries. I know they're looking forward to receiving qualified applicants. Those vacancies are 2 public members and 1 specialty contractor. And as far as our next board meeting, we're looking at the first or second week of December. It may well be a virtual meeting. Mariah is going to be serving all of you. I think she said she wanted to do that around the 1st of October because she thinks she'll have all your holiday plans by then, so I don't know. But that's the plan. So that is the Registrar update. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Is there any comment from board members? Any public comment? Okay, thank you. We will move on to the next item, D4, the CS packet. And I now invite Chief Deputy to introduce the budget update.
Good afternoon, and thank you. Yes, we are on page 50, and we thought we would do something a little bit different for this meeting than we normally do. We usually have a number of tables that break out the different expenditures, revenue, general fund payment, fund condition. We wanted to do a summary to kind of break down these tables right at the beginning. So what we have here on page 50 is a summary of fiscal year 21-22. And you'll see there at the top, the beginning reserve balance from last year is 1.8 million. And our final projected revenue is 81.4. And then you back out these costs. We have our general day-to-day operating expenses in the ordinary course of business. That's 69.7 projected. And then the external cost, which includes the DCA pro rata, is 5.7 million. And then we have a one-time general fund payment, which we'll get to shortly. But altogether, what we have here is $8.3 million in external costs, and you back out the board expenditures. And what you have there is $5.2 million at the end of the fiscal year in reserve. 1.8 of that, again, is the beginning reserve from last year. So that actually works out to a $3.4 million budget surplus. And what that means for us is operating expenses for one month is about $6 million, and it looks like we're right under that at 5.2, so we have 0.8 months in reserve for spending. So let's go through these tables now, which are kind of the breakdown of what we just went through for each category. You'll see on page 51, through May, it takes a few months to reconcile the end of the year expenses through DCA, so we only have numbers through May. But if you look right square in the middle of that table on the top of page 51, the May 2022 expenses, you'll see down there the grand total operating expenses at 63.5 million. Well, why is that different than the 69.7 on page 50? Well, that's because the 69.7 is projected. We only have numbers through May, so we're projecting another 6 million for the end of the year, which gets us from that 63 to 69. So I wanted to explain that a little bit. And then if you note at the top, we've only expended about 85% of our budget, which is good, through May. And then if you scroll down to bottom of page 51, you can see our revenue. And again, it matches 81.4 million. It matches the final revenue on page 50. And you'll note that we ended the year with 11% more revenue than last year, which is great. Now that general fund payback, my understanding is this is a one-time state retirement fund payout that every board or every agency was responsible for. We were hit at 2.6, so you can see that on page 50. The one-time general fund payment was backed out. And you can also see it on the bottom of page 52 in red. Again, a one-time expense. So the fund condition here on 52 is projected out through budget year 23-24. And you'll see that while we're looking at less than a month in reserve at the end of this year, next year we're looking at 2 months. We've projected out the operating expenses to go from 69 to 76, and we should be pretty healthy at the end of next year. And then you're all aware of the construction management education account. So the state budget allocates or appropriates $100,000 a year for CMEA. And last year, as we've discussed, we did secure budget bill language to allow us to ask to increase that appropriation every year through DOF to spend what's actually in the account. Because if you see here, we have a lot more funding than the $100,000. And so we want to make as much money available for schools as possible, but it does require an annual ask. And this page describes the process that we go through every year to do that. And then at the end, page 54, we are looking at the projected out preliminary budget for next year. And I think the main thing to point out here is it looks like we're looking at about a $1.8 million increase in operating expenses. So you'll see there in the middle of page 54, we're looking at 18.8 million, whereas last year we were at just about 17. But otherwise, that is the budget update summary. And then we'll just go real quickly through the statistics on page 55 through 58. Great news here. You'll note if you look at these numbers, the numbers are up in literally every category except for HIS registrations. So applications received are up, original apps are up, original licenses issued at the top of page 56 are up. A note about page 56, and I had to learn this myself, we have this concept of peak and non-peak. So our renewals are on 2-year cycles. So every year, there's a huge population of people who are up to renew their license on their second year. It turns out that we have this peak year concept where in odd years, there's simply more licensees that renew than on even years, or I might have switched that. Either way, you'll see on page 56 at the bottom, there's 116,000 renewals from 2018 to 2019 in an odd year, and then it goes up to 125 in 2020. Well, we're in the peak cycle for 2019 to 2020 and 21 to 22, so we're actually up from the 114 from the 2019-2020 fiscal year, we're up to 116, so we're up. And if you compare the two red columns, 2020, 2021 went up significantly, and we should see a significant increase in the 22, 23. So I just kind of wanted to explain the differences in the numbers there, peak and off-peak. And then that is basically it for the rundown of these charts, and that's the update. Thank you.
Thank you. Any comments?
I do have a question, since we have the CMEA. I think some board members may not know exactly what that is and where the money comes from. Can you describe that?
Yeah, excuse me, the Construction Management Education Account was established by statute in the mid-90s, I think, and it is just what it describes. It's a pot of money that is funded for construction management programs that are at specified state schools or any university that are accredited through. It's a national association. The name of the association is escaping me now, but the associations accredit the schools, and there's about 6 of them. And these are paid through the license renewals. So licensees have an option through their renewal to donate any number of money that they'd like or none to the Construction Management Education Account. And what we've seen is when we put our renewals online, boy, those numbers just went up. I think it just made it easier to donate instead of write a separate check or the paperwork process prior to online renewals. We got more donations when we went online. So that's why we went to the legislature and asked for the ability to adjust the appropriation every year.
Thank you.
I'd also like to comment that I appreciate the summary tables. I
Oh,
think that was
great.
a nice way to get oriented to.
Oh, I'm glad.
So yeah, that was cool.
Thank you. And Stacy is our budget manager. She normally does these updates, but we've got a lot of exec staff here, so we had she's holding down the fort back in Sacramento along with our admin chief.
Through the chair. I have a question on page 51. When it comes to the exam proctor, is the reason for the expenses higher because PSI kind of started all of their kind of information started with the testing that particular month, or is there something that I'm not seeing?
Which number are you looking at?
I'm looking at for exam proctor, and I'm assuming it has something to do with a CSLB staff and PSI or something, right?
Mike, can we have Carol Gagnon answer that?
Yeah, we're looking at it,
She's representing
yeah.
licensing today, and she's an expert with that subject.
I think the reason why you're seeing that is because when coronavirus happened, we reopened at half capacity our CSLB test centers, so we had a huge amount of overtime for our own staff to do evening sessions and things
Oh,
like
yeah,
that.
you
So
s-
I think that's part of what you're seeing with that increased budget. Now that it's gone to PSI, I think it's gonna come out of a different appropriation, if I am correct, Mike? Because we aren't paying their proctors directly, and we will no longer have our own proctors, so we're gonna see a change in that budget amount.
It should level out next year.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Any public comment? Okay, as there's no action requested, Chief Deputy Registrar Mike Jamnetsky to please update the board.
Sure. And ordinarily, our administrative division chief would do this update, but he's also back at home holding down the fort. So I'll jump around a little bit from what we have in the packet here, but I'll kind of make sure that we're all tracking. So 2 primary units, personnel and business services. Of course, personnel deals with recruitment and placement of staff, personnel issues, training and development, and then business services, of course, is contracts and procurement, cashiering, mailroom. So let's start with for the administrative update, let's actually start with the vacancies on page 61. So you'll note right there at the top, we averaged 47 vacancies last fiscal year. Now, the goal throughout, and I think through primarily any state agency, is to maintain a vacancy rate of about 10%. So if you do the math, we have 425 authorized positions. That's 42 vacancies. So we're a little bit higher. We're trending a little bit higher in our vacancies. But I do want to note that it's not significant, but we averaged 48 in 2021. 2020 to 2021, we're down to 47 this year. Well, what are staff doing about it? Let's jump over to page 60. We were able to add 13 additional employees from other state agencies and 9 employees that are new to state service, so the personnel unit is constantly adding staff and recruiting. But then, of course, you'll note right below that, we had 5 employees promoted and 3 transferred. That's great for those individual employees, but of course, it's a net zero for the vacancy, the number of vacancies. So we do focus on career development and training and development. You know, if you focus on staff development, if you demonstrate that you're able to train and willing to train, it can attract new staff. It can improve performance and engagement. It can assist with staff retention. So we want to develop some pour some resources into these things. So career development, you have a note here on page 61. We're pretty pleased that since February of last year, we've put on these, the administrative division has put on these career development demonstrations. They're live presentations to CSLB staff, focusing on one unit at a time and inviting staff to come apply and learn about these different units. So we've done admin, we've done enforcement, we've done licensing, and most recently in July, as your packet indicates, we did IT. And really what this is a Q&A session for staff to learn about the different divisions throughout CSLB, what they do, ask questions, and learn about some career development. And a special thanks to Mr. Board Member Michael Mark for participating in the July IT Career Development Mentoring Program Steering Committee is what it's called. And so we're pretty proud of that. And then if you, another step that we've taken to kind of tackle these vacancies is we did hire a retired annuitant in the personnel division to assist with some of these goals in the personnel division with career development and training and development. So right now, the personnel unit spends a lot of time with COVID tracking and COVID reporting. And that takes up a lot of time and resources. So this this retired annuitant will help the administrative staff get back to focusing on some of their staff recruitment and training goals. And then if we flip to page 64, here's just kind of it's not exhaustive, but it's a number of resources that are available to staff for training and development that we try to put forth every year, and this will remain a goal. Flipping back to page 61, the strategic plan item for the admin division, we will get to that during the strategic plan update in just a moment. And then at the end on page 63, not too much to note here. We do have some contract updates. Carol mentioned the transition to the PSI examination program. Because of that, we were able to close 2 leases, which is great. The Norwalk Testing Center is closing, as well as the San Jose, in the middle of your page here on page 63, the San Jose Testing Center is closing. Not too much exciting in the contracts and procurements, but I can answer any questions about those. And I think that was everything we wanted to cover for this update. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there
Thank you, Mary. Mike, for the invite to that CSB, and I actually learned from Jason and his team, it was a lot of information that the IT department does to make CSLB work behind the scenes. So other board members, I do recommend, if you're able to watch any of these career development videos, it helps you have a better understanding of CSLB as a whole. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate the comment. Any other comments? Agenda item, which coincidentally is the Information Technology 66 of your board packet. The CSLB Chief of Information Technology, Jason Perez, we'd invite you to update the board.
Thank you, Board Chair Teichert, and good afternoon, everyone. CSLB IT Wide Area Network, or SD-WAN. The SD-WAN enables CSLB to securely support application growth, network agility, and simplify our branch of office implementations. We anticipate that this project will be completed by October. We continue to place a priority on security, and recently, CSLB IT deployment of the next generation VPN began the rollout, which will encrypt all network traffic from CSLB managed assets remotely to our secure site. In addition to security, we recently completed a security campaign with CSLB staff in preparation of a military assessment to begin in December of 2022. While we had hoped for better results, we are very optimistic continuous reminders about security recommendations with tips and tricks for staff will have us better prepared for our military assessment in December. Lastly, the IT division is excited to start our next project as we start CSLB's next phase of business modernization. We have reviewed multiple applications and excited about the experiences and success stories by our counterparts at other boards and bureaus within the Department of Consumer Affairs. In addition, as part of the initial phase of this project, we are preparing for application to the California Department of Technology, who has invited departments and other agency entities to submit a business challenges that require an IT solution to modernize government and improve digital services for California residences. If our application is accepted, the Department of Technology, through the Technology Modernization Fund, will provide funding to CSLB to complete the project. We're anticipating this to happen by the end of 2022. This will conclude the information technology update. I am available for any questions.
Thank you, Jason. Is there any comment from board members? Any
have a
comment from the public?
I just have a question. Jason, on the online renewal transactions, which are still going very well, and congratulations on that, I noticed the e-kiosk numbers are down. Are we keeping them and their connection to the system?
We recently, back in a couple months ago, disconnected the e-kiosk from all remote offices, so we no longer are processing through the e-kiosk, and also too, we are removing more and more people are no longer needing the requirement to process through our kiosk application online. So we're pushing more to the immediate online renewal for all contractors.
Very good, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? 2022-24 Administration and Information Technology Strategic Plan Objectives. And the CSLB Chief Deputy Registrar Mike Jamnetsky and Chief of Information Technology Jason Perez, please update the board.
Update on.
Sure, sorry. As far as our 5.1 update, this is related to the IT security updating CSLB about the board about this. So we were going to be regularly providing updates at our quarterly meetings. And also, too, we anticipate also having a second member be appointed from the board to our IT advisory committee. The next update for this quarterly is item 5.3, which is the replacement of the automated phone system. IT is currently defining our business requirements and our technology requirements in anticipation that we'll be able to have a system in place by the beginning of 2023. The next current update is item 5.5, and this is the evaluate applicant and licensee online logins and profiles to help tailor the content to the user, track submissions, interactions, etc. This is part of our business modernization effort, and this is currently part of the application that we are submitting to the Department of Technology related to the Technology Modernization Fund application that we have submitted, we're going to be submitting. So at this time, we're waiting on that.
And for the admin strategic plan items, there's two. It's 5.2 and 5.4. 5.2 is to develop additional surveys to get some feedback on how staff are doing, how the website is going, customer service, where can we improve. And so you'll see there under current status, we've developed 3 ideas for surveys. This is not exhaustive. It doesn't have to be these items. We will accept any ideas for, if anybody has ideas for soliciting input from contractors and customers, our stakeholders, let us know. So some of the ones we came up with, you know, maybe a licensee is decided not to renew, or maybe they've decided to go inactive. Why? Maybe they're not retiring. Maybe they decided, you know, maybe they're changing their business. It would be nice to have some information as to why people don't renew. That's our revenue. It would be nice to get some data on that. So that's one idea. Also, number 2, kind of a no-brainer, but how is the website going? Is this easy to use? Where can we improve some areas, functionality? I noticed some on our website, sometimes there's things you click, you think you're going one place and it takes you somewhere else. How can we improve in those areas? And then online renewal services, those are new. We're pretty proud of that. Thank you to IT for getting that up and going. How can we improve in that area? And like I said, we'll accept other ideas for surveys if you have some thoughts. And then item 5.4, during the admin update, we talked about staff development and career development. This is an important area. We want to, you know, get those vacancies down and have staff want to work for the board and continue to work for the board, and that involves pouring resources into development and training. So we did draft, and by we I mean the administrative division did draft the staff recruitment, onboarding, and training plan, and their status describes what's in it. But really, we want an attack plan for when we get someone on board, how we can teach them to effectively be an employee at CSLB and want to stay and want to develop their career there. So this plan describes what's going to be the attack plan there. And that's the update.
Okay, thank you. As there's no action requested, we will move on to the enforcement section of our agenda, and I will turn it over to Enforcement Committee Chair Michael Mark.
All right, I think I got papers all over my desk here. So my name is Michael Mark. As Chair of the Enforcement Committee, the update for Enforcement Division today. Starting on agenda item E1, update, review, discussion, and possible action on the 2022-2024 strategic plan objectives. I'll start with agenda item E1, which begins on page 75 of your board packet. The Enforcement Committee held a virtual meeting on August 3rd, and staff provided committee members with a progress report of the enforcement objectives in the 2022-2024 strategic plan. As a result of the information and recommendations provided at the meeting, the Enforcement Committee unanimously passed 3 fully formed motions to bring before the full board, which I will discuss in turn. So moving on to page 77 of your packet, we will begin with an update on the strategic goal 2.1, which reads, leverage current enforcement tools, which include letters of admonishment and accusations, to increase licensee and business knowledge by requiring contractors subject to CSLB corrective action to take specific courses. So the issue here is how to expand the use of educational courses as a corrective action for those who violate the contractor's license law. Staff has consulted with numerous educational institutions and have identified several courses that could be appropriately prescribed for specific violations. Currently, CSLB can require the completion of training with a letter of admonishment when it's appropriate. And although the requirement to attend additional training can be used with an accusation, there is no easy method for enforcing that requirement. The only mechanism to enforce a training requirement is a disciplinary order resulting from an accusation by filing a second accusation. This is a costly and time-consuming process. Ideally, a respondent who has been served with an accusation, afforded an administrative hearing to contest the accusation, and been determined to have violated contractor's license law would receive a disciplinary order that may include a training requirement that must be complied with to retain licensure. Existing law provides for licensee revocation when a disciplinary order requiring restitution is not complied with. This proposal would add the training requirement to that authority. Legislative authority is required. Industry leaders who attended a June 6th meeting with CSLB and Deputy Attorney General liaisons are receptive to this change, and this is what staff have recommended. Therefore, the Enforcement Committee recommends the following motion: that the full board consider a legislative proposal authorizing CSLB to automatically revoke a license subject to a formal disciplinary order if the receiving respondent does not complete a specific instructional course and/or take and pass a business law or trade exam. Since this is a recommendation that comes from the committee of the board, it comes to you as a fully formed motion and no first and second prior to a vote. Recap, the Enforcement Committee had our meeting. They voted and approved this recommendation to the full board. We're here before the full board that this motion be accepted and a first and a second. But first, before we start that, is there any public comment? No. And then please state your name fully, please.
Good afternoon. I'm Phil Vermeulen with Contractor Licensing Center and also represent the Flasher Barricade Association. I've been attending license board meetings, I hate to admit it, for 41 years. I was a child prodigy. I started when I was 5. That's another story. I was just asking Jesse here a minute ago. Registrar Fote and I have talked about this before. Over 80% of the complaints and how much enforcement dealings are with home improvement. Obviously, that's the biggest sore point, and we need to focus on that. I think this proposal here is excellent. I think it's long overdue. But I'd like to take it a step further, and Mr. Fote and I have talked about this. It's been a while, though, and that would be home improvement contract. Put it on your website. I think you need to focus more on educating John Q. home improvement contractor. You spend so much time on your enforcement. Maybe if you were a little more proactive in terms of maybe even videos and things like that that they could go online to see, I think it would help a lot to solve some of that problem. Maybe we can get that 80% down, be able to focus on the big people out there. That's my 2 cents worth. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Can you turn off the microphone, please? And sir, we will take your recommendation, and Dave Folk will be able to respond to you. So, seeing that as the recommendation from the Enforcement Committee of this particular motion, there's no first or second that is required. Mariah, would you like to take roll, please?
Mary Teichert,
Aye.
Rodney Kobos, David De La Torre,
Aye.
Miguel Galarza, Susan Granzella, Alan Guy, Jacob Lopez, Diana Love, Michael Mark,
Aye.
Steve Pinelli, Jim Ruane, approved absence, Johnny Simpson, Motion passes.
All right, thank you, Mariah. Moving onward. So next, we have an update regarding Strategic Goal 2.2, which begins on page 79 of your board packet. Research the scope of unlicensed practice, evaluate allocated enforcement resources, and meet with industry stakeholders to review enforcement strategies. We know from CSLB's proactive stings and sweeps that unlicensed activity is widespread in California. But the full scope of unlicensed, or better known as underground economy activity, is difficult to determine since it is, by definition, undocumented and unrecorded. A preliminary survey by CSLB staff recently found that 78% of online contractors' ads did not include a contractor's license as required by law. It is presumed that many of these operators are, in fact, unlicensed. To ensure that CSLB's limited enforcement resources are being properly allocated, division staff and the enforcement committee are recommending that an outside contractor be hired to conduct a study with two general objectives. First one, to better assess the size of California's underground economy in the construction industry. And secondly, to review all CSLB's enforcement operations and staffing to ensure public safety is optimized. A more specific scope of this work proposed in the study is found on the bottom of page 78 of your packet. Staff have explored potential vendors and believe the cost of completing such a proposed study would not exceed $75,000. Therefore, the Enforcement Committee recommends the following motion: that the full board authorize the expenditure of up to $75,000 to hire a private consultant to assess CSLB's enforcement operations and staffing as specified. Since this recommendation comes from a committee of the board, it comes to you as a fully formed motion and needs no first or second prior to a vote. Again, do we have any public comment for this? Is there any board comment? All right. Mariah, can we please take roll?
Mary Teichert,
Aye.
Rodney Cobos,
Aye.
David De La Torre,
Aye.
Miguel Galarza, Susan Granzella, Alan Guy,
Aye.
Jacob Lopez, Diana Love, Michael Mark,
Aye.
Steve Pinelli, Jim Ruane, approved absence, Johnny Simpson. Motion passes.
Okay, thank you, Mariah. Up next, we will be discussing Strategic Goal 2.3, which begins on page 79 of your packet. This objective states, coordinate educational workshops with agency partners to assist applicants and licensees in complying with contractor state license law and other business requirements. At a meeting with CSLB on July 6, 2022, industry representatives expressed support of this goal. Since then, Registrar Folk has reached out to the Multi-Agency Joint Enforcement Strike Task Force regarding their participation and assistance with future licensing workshops. Working with JESF, the Joint Enforcement Strike Force, and the Employment Development Department, CSLB staff will participate in construction-related seminars to discuss contractors' licensing requirements and related subjects. CSLB's Public Affairs Office will be taking the lead in publicizing and coordinating CSLB enforcement staff participation at these EDD seminars. Public Affairs and enforcement staff will also be developing regularly scheduled webinars to assess licensees. Agency partners will be invited to participate in planning and presenting these webinars. So moving on to page 80, you will find an update on this Strategic Goal 2.4, which states, review, create a structured training program with Enforcement Academy to achieve statewide investigation and legal consistency. Staff have made progress with this objective on multiple fronts. Staff have worked with Brent Jex, our liaison at the Attorney General's office, to develop a proposed framework and timeline for a new ongoing training program at CSLB, including the eventual relaunch of Enforcement Trainings Academy. Enforcement Division has developed and implemented a 41-point training checklist for new special investigators. A division analysis has been designated at the training coordinator, and she has developed a training spreadsheet for all employees to track and record their completed trainings. Using a designated training fund, 15 special investigators are here in Coronado attending the 3-day investigator training course being presented by the National Association of State Contractors Licensing Agencies. So moving on to page 80, you will find an update on Strategic Goal 2.5, which states, research the need to establish a public works enforcement unit to perform outreach to awarding agencies and coordinate public works investigations with compliance groups and government entities to enforce contractors' license law requirements. After meeting with industry representatives and compliance groups, staff believes that the creation of a dedicated public works unit is not necessary. Instead, staff thinks a better and more flexible option would be to augment staffing in Enforcement Division's existing quality assurance unit to give appropriate attention to public works and other specialized investigations. Specifically, staff recommends that 4 special investigators be assigned to the quality assurance unit with specialized duties that includes public works investigations. The Enforcement Committee therefore recommends the following motion. This is the recommendation, that the full board amend the objective from research the need for public works units to dedicate 4 special investigators to work specified public works complaints within the existing quality assurance unit. Since this recommendation comes from a committee of the board, it comes to you as a fully formed motion and no need for a first or second prior to a vote. Is there any questions on any of these items here on page 80? And then obviously I did skip a couple of the strategic goals. I'll go back a little bit. Is there any other questions on any of the other goals? Any public comment? So we're going to take a vote on this. Mariah, can you please call roll?
Mary Tykert,
Aye.
Rodney Kobos, David De La Torre,
Aye.
Miguel Galarza, Susan Granzella, Alan Guy, Jacob Lopez, Diana Love, Michael Mark,
Aye.
Steve Pinelli, James Ruane, approved absence. Johnny Simpson. Motion passes.
All right, thank you, Mariah. Okay, moving on to the final enforcement strategic goal that was discussed at our committee meeting. This is Enforcement Strategic Goal 2.6, and this update begins on page 81 of your packet. The goal states, continue to enforce workers' compensation insurance requirements to protect consumers and workers and scrutinize licensees who self-certify they have no employees. On July 20th, 2022, Enforcement Division held a statewide supervisors meeting at which the issues of workers' compensation insurance were discussed. The importance of enforcing insurance requirements was emphasized. The supervisors were also reminded that the maximum civil penalty for filing a false exemption from workers' compensation insurance was recently increased from $5,000 to $30,000, thanks to CSLB-sponsored Assembly Bill 569. That concludes the update of the Enforcement Division strategic goals. I'll now turn it over to Enforcement Chief Steve Grove for the enforcement program update.
Thank you, Mr. Mark. We're now moving on to agenda item E2, the enforcement program update, which begins on page 86 of your packet. I'm going to discuss the updates in the order they appear in your packet, starting with the staff vacancy update. The table at the top of page 86 shows the number of vacant positions in the Enforcement Division by classification within the division as of July 21st. As you can see, there are currently 25 vacancies within the division. 8 of those positions have candidates selected and are pending approval for hire. Division management is working hard to fill the remaining 17 positions, but have reported that the tight labor market has made it more difficult to find and recruit qualified candidates. The vacant positions have been posted on the state's hiring website, or will be soon, and the division's recruitment efforts will continue. Investigation highlights. The next item in your packet highlights the impressive results of 2 major investigations completed by Enforcement Division investigators. The first case involves unlicensed contractor Shenandoah Johnson. Mr. Johnson has been defrauding consumers in multiple states for years. He already has a long criminal rap sheet. His usual tactic involves approaching his victims, who are often elderly, offering to complete needed roof or driveway repairs. Johnson often claimed to be licensed, and he would extract large upfront payments from his victims. He would then complete little or no work before disappearing with the victims' funds. Prompted by numerous complaints, an investigation was launched by CSLB's Statewide Investigative Fraud Unit, or SWIFT. SWIFT investigators worked closely with the District Attorney's Office in Siskiyou County, where Johnson had defrauded many of his victims. Although Johnson fled the area, he was eventually arrested and brought to trial. I'm happy to report that justice was recently served. On July 13, Johnson was convicted by a jury of 38 felonies, including first-degree burglary, grand theft from an elder, misappropriation of construction funds, extortion, failure to file a tax return, perjury, welfare fraud, conspiracy, failure to appear in court, and using a false contractor's number with intent to defraud. Johnson is still awaiting sentencing, and the next court appearance is scheduled for today, actually, August 30th. He could receive up to 27 years in state prison. The second investigation highlight begins on page 87 of your packet and involves unlicensed contractor Jose Solis, who did business as Echo Solar Home Improvement. Solis's usual tactic was to contract for solar projects, then take out substantial home improvement loans on behalf of the homeowners, sometimes even without their consent, through the Property Assessed Clean Energy Program, usually called PACE. After the loan proceeds and large upfront payments were received, Solis would quickly abandon the project and disappear. Solis may have defrauded up to 100 homeowners in the Los Angeles area. After the consumer complaints started coming in, an investigation was launched by CSLB's Special Investigation Unit, who worked with the Los Angeles City Attorney's Office. On July 28, the Superior Court issued a summary judgment against Solis and his collaborators, found Solis guilty of embezzlement, diversion of construction funds, false advertising, contracting without a license. The court's final judgment requires restitution to financially injured consumers of over $2.2 million, with civil penalties of another $4 million.